Before we start, we need to tell you up front we are not a licensed financial planning, accounting or law firm. This is simply an education program which will give you factual information. We do not give any general or specific advice around finance, business, investing, options trading or anything else. That is not what this presentation does. Please see a licensed financial planner when it comes to any investment advice you need.
And we've got the greater wealth with the one, the only, the gorgeous, the beautiful Derek.
You make me nervous with an introduction like that. The beautiful. Okay. What do you want?
You're lunch, but that's okay. You're beautiful in your own way. I'm just checking these levels. I think I'm a little bit loud. You're a little bit soft. And that should be it. Beautiful. So, Derek, how you been?
I'm really, really well. Yeah. Been a busy week, crazy week, but it's been good.
I'm nervous because I didn't even know Aaron wasn't going to be here. He's normally running the show. So this is going to be fun.
Well, we've done it before once without Aaron, so, you know.
Yeah, but I had warning then.
Yes.
So anyway, so we got the greater wealth. Believe it or not, look at this. I actually have a piece of paper with talking points. I'm getting organized, which is extremely rare and weird. And I feel so naked not having a computer in front of me. Seeing the comments is, at least I get the good camera today.
Well, I've got the camera. I've got the computer for you.
We got to get you a real computer.
Like a real computer? Okay.
But not a vegetable.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to go there with you. But anyway, it's argumentative.
No, Apple were great until Steve Jobs died. And then I think they just rehashed the same product. It's the computers you get now from Apple are identical to the ones they released back when Steve was here.
The reason I like them is I don't have to program to do anything. They just do it. I'm not...
Plug and play for the win.
I'm not an IT guy.
You would hate Linux then. To change the background images like 30 minutes worth of coding.
No thanks. No thanks.
Anyway, so talking of coding, this has absolutely nothing to do with coding. How about we jump straight in?
We got a lot on the show today.
Yeah.
You want to go through it?
I'll let you do it because you actually wrote the copyright for today's show.
So we're going to be looking at the whole interesting facts around the money behind Ukraine-Russian war, mostly from an Australian perspective. We're not going to be looking so much internationally, but we're going to be looking at that and what's not being said as opposed to what is being said.
I hate to say, I think that's actually more important than what's actually being said because there's so much misinformation from both sides of politics being bandied around. So
we're going to be looking at that. Let's get to that in a moment because otherwise I'm going to go on that tangent. You're going to want to wind me up and go, okay. And the second thing we're going to be looking at is you want to talk about the Federal Reserve and
there was some
announcements.
Big news coming out last night.
How that affects the
on the
market.
Australian. So I have to say, shout out to the Australian on the business side of things. They've been really good lately. No, this show is not sponsored by the Australian, but if the Australian wants to give us some money, that'd be great. And talking
you mean the
of
newspaper?
Money,
okay, I was wondering what you were talking about. Gotcha.
No, the story came through on the Australian. I can't remember the journo that wrote it, but God, bloody good article, like a really, really good one. So
I haven't read it, so I look forward to that update.
It's 3:00 this morning. I'm sitting there reading the newspaper.
As you do at 3 a.m.
Of course.
I wasn't. Look at the back of my eyelids. And the other final thing is it's an exciting week because we've, for the last couple of weeks, been talking about how to fund your life purpose, understanding techniques of wealthy use. That course, which is available, it's valued at $47. We're going to be announcing winners regarding that today. So,
yes. And then we'll be getting in contact with them and showing them how to get their copy, which is going to be really, really exciting. So awesome. Let's jump straight into it. We're talking Ukraine and Russia.
So let's look at it this way, right? The funny thing about media is that you develop a narrative. The question is, which narrative do you listen to? And the problem that's happened in media in recent times, particularly in the United States, is that you'll get left-wing media and right-wing media, okay? And that's not always helpful because what people do is, I like that storyline as opposed to I like this storyline. Yeah. So I'll go with the storyline that suits my beliefs and values, etc. With it, what the problem with that is it leaves different pieces of the puzzle out. Traditional journalism produces both sides of the story. So it's difficult to wade through that in this day and age. It's also difficult by the nature of war. It always attracts propaganda, okay, and convincing the masses who's right, who's wrong. So I want to put this all in context of what's actually going on. It's not like we are taking sides here of any particular country. We're just going, what are the things that aren't being spoken about in the narrative that perhaps need to be discussed? All right. So I started looking at the question of how much money has Australia actually given Ukraine effort in relation to what it's been doing. So if you look at it on the Australian government website, the minister.defence.gov.au, on the 4th of July, they announced that Australian government will provide an additional 100 million Australian for military assistance to Ukraine. That's an additional, okay? And some equipment. They've got some 20 more Bushmaster protected mobility vehicles, right?
I didn't even know we're actually giving equipment.
We're giving equipment as well. And it then goes on to say that the increase in support takes Australia's total military assistance to the government of Ukraine to over 385 million Australian dollars. And this is where the propaganda comes in to justify what it's doing. It says, as Russia continues its brutal and illegal invasion of Ukraine, okay? Those are emotive words, those are judgmental words, attacking civilian targets and killing innocent people.
It's really funny you say attacking civilians, because Russia's just put out an announcement stating that it was Ukraine that was attacking the civilians.
Right. So you're going to hear, and this is the problem. You've got to hear both sides of the story to go, hey, what's actually going on? So
it just doesn't make sense why Russia would be attacking the civilians, because I don't know the geographical side of things, but apparently I've got a friend who's Russian, and he was saying that I think there's about 18 million people in Ukraine, and something like 15 million on the eastern side of them are actually mostly Russians anyway. They just live in Ukraine. So they'd be effectively attacking their own people, which doesn't make sense. But then again, it's Russia. So again, how much is truth and how much is a load of shit?
Yeah, it's crazy. Joshua's enjoyed the conversation. He says foreign aid, taking money from poor people in rich countries and giving it to rich people in poor countries.
Oh, I wouldn't call Ukraine a poor country.
Well, let's get to that in a minute, okay? Let's get to that in a minute, because this is really interesting where it's going. Because obviously, from a political standpoint, this is what bugs me. We're taxpayers, okay?
We don't have a choice in this. They're stealing our money.
We work hard for our money. We pay our taxes.
Sorry. This is just, I don't want to get Derek into trouble here. When I say they're stealing our money, it's called tax.
Fair enough. Okay. So throw in the disclaimer. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So let's look at this. Okay. $385 million. Okay. Now that's not including all the other international support that Ukraine has attracted. Yep. So anytime you get a grant from the government in Australia, you have to give an account of what it is you've done with that money. Okay. So there's a number of things that the questions just pop up. I go, okay, what is it that Australia is getting by putting money into this? Okay, because nothing's free. Let's just face it. You know, people just don't give $385 million away because they're being charitable most times. Okay, now some would say we're defending their rights, etc., etc. But the question becomes, we've probably got Russian people living within Australian society. Yeah. We've got Ukrainian people living within society.
I know for a fact we have Russian people in Australia because I'm actually quite good friends with a few.
I've met a Russian person who lives around a couple of streets from me and that sort of stuff as well. Absolutely lovely, lovely individual. So why are we as a nation picking sides here politically? War is always about politics. Let's just face it. Okay. So generally people go to war. Nations go to war for a couple of things. One, to defend their borders. Okay. If it's a defensive move. Secondly, they feel that there is the opportunity to advance their interests economically, different nations, etc.
Yep.
And I think we as a nation are very, very cynical of war since
World War II.
Well,
let's be honest. The little dude with the mo, he caused a lot of problems. Especially
absolutely, and the nation pays for it. You know, the amount of people who arm up on behalf of their nation and go through post-traumatic stress syndrome. That's no laughing matter. These are serious things. So there's also that cost to the community and the generations, because people come back and they're never the same again, right? Now, let's break this down. Okay, so there's those interests in there. But, okay, let's play it this way. Who decides who's the good guys, who's the bad guys here? This is a war that's how many thousands of miles away from Australia, right? So why are we getting involved with it? You'd have to ask, well, NATO is probably one of the reasons, because Australia is a part of that.
Are we, though? I didn't think we were part of NATO.
We've been a part of that since 1953.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
But
we were the non-European nation that entered into NATO in 1953.
Could we be then arguably the cause of this war?
No, I don't think so.
Because this is probably going to annoy a few people. The whole reason, well, the reasoning that Russia gave for starting the invasion is because they want to switch out the government for another government that will not join NATO. So apparently there's a peace agreement between Russia and NATO saying that NATO will not bring Poland, Ukraine, and there's a couple other countries there.
Yep.
They will not allow them to join NATO because they want a country between Russia and the NATO countries.
A buffer of
A
geography.
buffer.
Yep.
So by inviting Ukraine, Poland, and a few others to join NATO, they're actually breaching this peace agreement.
Mhm.
So arguably you could say that the war is justified because NATO is the one that broke the peace agreement. But I hate war. I think it's stupid. The civilians are the ones that suffer from it. NATO should never have actually instigated this.
These people are cousins. All right. If you go back to 700 AD, the Kiev people, sorry, not the Kiev people, the Rus people, and this is where we get the word Russia, and also Belarus, our US represents those tribals. They went to Ukraine, and then the nation split, and basically people said, we'll go look over at the Russia area and develop a nation there. And of course, decades, centuries later, people form their own identities and personalities, but they're related, right?
Yeah.
And they're fighting. So we've got to look at that. And with any European war, you're looking at hundreds and hundreds of years of conflict and differences and all that sort of stuff. You've got to dive into that bit of history, which the Western media has done a bit of, okay? And they're also talking about the difference between not Australia, sorry, the NATO implications of them going over, that Ukraine has decided to go more for a Western view, Russia wants to stay Russian, and that's hence why the conflict. Now, I don't think it's that simple, all right? I don't think it's that simple. Bringing it back to Australia, all right, I dug in this. I thought, why would Australia donate $385 million to this cause, all right? And I thought, well, what do we do as a nation in terms of trading with the Ukrainians? It's really, really interesting. They're not a huge trading partner with Australia. Okay.
No, I didn't think they would be.
They're not. Okay. It's modest. And if you look at, and that's how the Australian government describes it in its DFAT website here, it says that merchandise exports from Australia are about at 29.8 million back in 2017, 2018.
Wow, that's a really low
and
return on investment.
And guess what we were doing? It was coal, all right? Which is really interesting with the energy crisis going on in Europe right now. So what it says to me is Ukraine's going, we don't want to rely on energy from Russia. We want to get it outside somewhere else. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. What do we get back from Ukraine? Well, we get some vegetable oils and fats, okay? That's what we import from Ukraine. Australia invested $49 million in Ukraine in 2017. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting.
29 million on top of the 300 plus?
Yeah, we invested 49 million back in 2017. It doesn't say what we invested in.
See, that'd be an interesting one to find out.
Right.
Because that'd be nearly 400 million all up we've given to Ukraine then.
Well, rewind back. Now, this is, it's ironic, the date here, the 1st of April 2016, Australia and Ukraine signed a nuclear cooperation agreement.
Is that a bad joke?
No. And this would enable...
Sorry, 1st of April had to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all right. And that's right, we're broadcasting in the afternoon, so we can't include it. I don't know who made that silly rule up. But anyway, Australia exported uranium to Ukraine, one of the world's top 10 generators of nuclear power.
So if we've got a signed agreement to export to Ukraine in 2016, how much uranium have we actually exported to Ukraine?
You'd have to dig deeper onto that. But this is where it's interesting. The agreement came into force in June of 2017.
Yeah.
And it allowed Australia to help Ukraine diversify its energy supply, according to the website, enhance bilateral cooperation between Australia and Ukraine on nuclear-related activities, including nuclear safeguards, security, safety, and science. That's pretty broad, those descriptions.
Nuclear safeguard.
What is a nuclear safeguard?
That's a nuclear bomb, isn't it?
What is nuclear security?
Nuclear bomb.
What is nuclear safety? And what is nuclear science?
Okay, science could be the generation of medical and energy, but that's a bomb. It has to be nuclear armament.
Well, you're speculating. We don't know.
Of course.
For sure.
Oh, totally
but
speculation.
What do those words actually mean?
By the way, speculating.
Getting details, right? Joshua says our defense strategy seemed to be not very good at NATO. Long as Hardwick.
Oh, that's the sign you're getting old, Derek. So this is what I'm saying. Like, oh, it's so weird not having my computer there.
I know.
So-
We'll get back to normal next time. So that's really, really interesting. So is Australia, what is it doing with uranium to Ukraine, which is one of the top 10 generators of nuclear power? It's
So
written and
the
printed
other
here on the government website, the Australian government website.
Okay, my conspiracy theory mind is going out of control now. So my first thought is you got to remember the USA invaded Iraq claiming, oh, they had weapons of mass destruction.
Mhm.
So that was reasons to absolutely destroy the economy and turn it into an absolute shithole.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we have an agreement with Ukraine, which you got to remember they have a lot of ties to the Biden family and the Clinton family. Just anything to do with those two families, I'd want nothing to do with them. I just could not trust a single word that came out of anything from that area, especially when you start talking about nuclear power. The other one, like some of the rumors I've heard around human trafficking through that area is insane. I don't know if we're covering that for this show or not.
Well, let's talk about it now. If you look on the Global Organized Crime Index website, right?
Yeah.
And it rates different nations according to their crime. Okay. It's really fascinating what comes up in relation to the Ukraine. It has what it rates as a 6.1 criminality score, right? 6.18 out of 10, with a resilience score of 4 in terms of how to control it. Now, it says that it's the third of 44 countries in Europe. Okay. So it's up there in terms of its crime.
So that's the most crime or least crime?
So third in its criminality score, it's up there. It's 34th of 193 countries, right, in the world, and third of 44 countries in Europe.
So
right?
it's
And
one
third
the
of
highest
17
crime
countries in Central and Eastern Europe.
Okay.
So if you look at the breakdown, guess what the number one crime in organized crime, that is, in Ukraine is?
I don't have to say trafficking of some sort.
It is. It is, sadly. It's source, transit, and destination point for human trafficking, extremely pervasive in the country, according to the Globalized Organized Crime Index.
This is really interesting because you've got Ukraine claiming Russia is attacking civilians.
Mm-hmm.
You've got obviously the links between the Biden family and Ukraine, where when Biden, the current president, was the VP, he was bragging about getting one of their judges fired.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they'll not hold back funding. And then you've got all the Hunter Biden laptop documents that were related to Ukraine. And then you also have them listed third in Europe for the highest crime rate. And one of the main things is human trafficking.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Australian government turning around saying, oh, we got to help Ukraine. Like my conspiracy theory mind's going, ooh.
It's really, really interesting. What they're doing is trafficking. According to this website, male victims from the Roma community are targeted by traffickers to exploit them for forced begging or as drug mules. And the women are subject to sexual exploitation, primarily in foreign countries. Destination countries for Ukrainian trafficking victims are usually regional, such as Poland, Russia, and Germany, but could be further afield. In addition, a limited number of foreign nationals, primarily from Moldova, Russia, and Uzbekistan, are subject to forced labor in Ukraine in sectors such as construction, agriculture, manufacturing, domestic work.
Wow, that's
it's
insane.
listed as a transit and origin country in the transnational human smuggling market. That's its number one crime. All right. Do you know what its second number crime is in the Ukraine?
Oh, blow my mind.
Substantial stockpile of weapons. Few barriers to accessing arms and millions of small arms and light weapons on the black market. Now, why do I bring all this up? Okay. I bring this up because there were reports coming out that Russia generals discovered that there were bioweapons laboratories within Ukraine that they were looking at, and they claimed that it was funded by the United States. Now, Al Jazeera reported on this, saying that the White House Secretary of State denied this and said,
Of course they would. Of course they would.
We're not
We're
near
under
it.
the Biden administration.
And more stories are coming out from other sources. The Russian news agency, TASS, the headline is Biden must explain his son's involvement in Biolab's Operation Ukraine.
That's what I was about to say.
Quoting the Duma speaker. All right. So why am I bringing all of this up? Am I saying Russia is the good guys here? No, I'm not. Am I saying Ukraine are the good guys here? Well, it's been presented that way from an
Especially in Australian media.
From the Australian media, the mainstream media, and I'm going, is it? Because I can tell you now, in any time there's a fight, it takes two to fight. Excuse me. There's two people fight, right? There's always Are they both right or wrong? It's too simple to go, one is a good guy, one is a bad guy here. This is complicated.
Politics is never simple. Like
Right.
there's never a right answer.
But I think this is in light particularly of the whole, we went to war not long ago and said Aussie boys and girls over there to put their lives on the line for weapons of mass destruction, which were never there.
Never existed.
Never existed. So our radar in terms of, hey, is this legit or not? What's propaganda? What is spin? Has really, really come to play now.
Yep.
And I just look at this and go, you're spending taxpayers' money on a war, thousands of miles here. I think we also need to question in terms of Australia's defence. Let's face it.
Is dismal.
Well, it is on its own. Why didn't we spend that money on our own defence to bolster that up a bit? But not just that. Australia's typical defence has always been, since its origins, let's get on the side of a bigger country that can help defend us in time of war. We've done that since the Anzacs. We've done that in World War II.
Oh, since our creation.
And understandably too, because the nation is very, very young. Okay, I get it. I'm not condemning that. I get it. But what I would say is this, is the organizations that Australia perhaps joined back in 1953, they've changed, right? The people running them have changed. The people agendas have changed. The climate of world politics has changed. Is it time to review these kind of organizations, associations with these organizations?
What I'd love to see Australia do. Now, this is just my personal opinion here. I think we need to actually, first of all, boost our military.
Yep.
I know we've got some of the best troops in the SAS, like worldwide. The skill level of our SAS is absolutely phenomenal, but they've got no backup at this stage. We don't have the military infrastructure. We don't have the bases. We don't have the equipment. I'm talking airplanes, Navy, ships, aircraft carriers. We just don't have anything. Our budget spending compared to all these other countries. Well, have a look at this similar population. Singapore, the size of their military and their military spending compared to ours is chalk and cheese. You can't compare the two. So we're very, very vulnerable. If we turn around and go to one of these countries, considering how much natural resources we have, if they were prepared to destroy Iraq over a lie, imagine what they're prepared to do to Australia for our natural resources.
I think what we've got to realize here is that, I mean, the comments are streaming in today. I think what we've got to realize here is that energy is COVID has put us back to basics, right? There's been questions about food supply.
Well, we don't even, like the size of us, we don't even have a secure food supply.
Backup in terms of oil.
We don't have that.
So energy. So
sorry, I have to do a shout out to One Nation here for this one. Pauline's been screaming for us to get back to our legislated 90 days. I think at one point we got down to 21 days of diesel reserves.
Right.
That's how far behind we were. And this is pre-COVID.
And the US has got the same problem now. But the problem is that the US can actually create its own oil and that sort of stuff as well. Yeah. But I think what it's highlighted is the vulnerability of not having energy, the vulnerability of supply chains being interrupted, the vulnerability of interruption to food. People have gone food conscious. There's a lot of worry and fear in the community. And I can understand it. Now, I don't buy into that fear. I refuse to live my life by fear. I used to battle it, but I've overcome that, and I just refuse to go there now. But I think what we've got to question, though, is who's controlling this? And this is what's really, really on the minds of many Australians right now, is why? There's such a huge mistrust, I think, in three things that I'm noticing in the community. Government, phenomenally the medical world now.
Yes, 100%. 100% agree with that.
You used to trust your doctor without question. A lot of people going, hang on a second, can we trust the medical fraternity now anymore? And there was a third one. Oh, and the media.
Oh, the media had lost faith years ago. This has really, really highlighted it. So,
and we've seen the emergence of all these different voices of media, including this one we're on, are, saying, hey, we've got to present a balanced approach here, as opposed to a one mainstream brought out narrative as we come back to that.
Now, what I'd love to do is just bring this back to the financial markets in Australia in particular. If the government is giving away so much money to Ukraine under questionable circumstances, like we're looking 400 million plus here, the distrust within the government because of the actions of the government, how much money they're giving away, and also the distrust within medical industry. So one of the safest shares to own used to be Johnson & Johnson. is it now getting to the point where, especially knowing the level of distrust within the Australian industries, are these three major, well, let's look at the two ones you actually buy shares in. So media, so Fox News, Channel 9, Channel 10, all the ones that own them, and also the medical companies within Australia. Do you think the distrust is going to be enough to start pulling their share prices down? Do you think there's going to be an impact on our Australian markets?
I think Americans are very good at boycotting companies. I don't think Australians are traditionally.
I think we're too lazy, to be honest with you.
Or we're too busy to just take note. We don't stand up for our freedoms. We don't stand up and fight back, right? When America says, right, Disney, you can't keep putting a woke agenda out in front of our kids and doing this, right? We're not going to your fun parks anymore. We're not buying your streaming services and your movies and your merchandise.
Well, have a look at what happened to Netflix when they released
falling and continues to fall.
I think Netflix lost $8 billion overnight when they refused to pull the show Cuties.
Yep.
Which was just like a bunch of like young girls shading their back end out of camera.
PayPal.
Yep.
PayPal recently announced that if you breach our conditions and terms, you'll cop a $2,500 fine for each offense. Without notice to businesses, and suddenly, they put these posts out. These companies put these posts out on social media. PayPal doesn't like them. Now they've retracted that since, but people are gone, that's it. We're done. We were not accepting payments via PayPal.
I have been asked for Edge to help fund it if we can get it set up at PayPal. I was like, no. I'm against the idea of, and people like Joel Jamal is another one who does a lot of it for Turning Point Australia. They still use PayPal, but they're actively looking for an alternative. So PayPal's getting slammed. All of them getting slammed. But one thing I have noticed, we're now like 27 minutes into the show. Let's we do need to have a quick song because this is, I think we don't have to revisit the Ukraine thing because it's juicy. There's so much content in it, and how it's going to affect the markets over here is quite interesting as well. So we have been talking about Russia and the Ukraine or Russia or whatever. The conflict over there, the crime rates, and also the insane amount of money that we've been giving. So the one thing that we really wanted to talk about this one, and this is kind of an interesting one, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with Russia, in my opinion, but also the Reserve Bank of Australia has announced that they anticipate that house prices in Australia will be going down between 1 to 1.7%. So this was reported on the Australian, from now to midway or the end of 2023. So they're anticipating within the city, so Melbourne and Sydney, a 20% reduction in house values, which is huge. That's massive. That's 1/5 of the value of your house for those who aren't good with percentages.
Yep.
The scary thing is, so normally there's a lot of YouTube commentators, especially around the property markets in Australia, which they talk about regional versus capital city investment. So when I say regional for WA, it'd be like Mandurah, Geraldton, like large centres that are just outside of the city. Right. New South Wales, you'd be looking at, Geelong's Victoria. Something like Griffith is sort of, you're close enough to the city that is less than a day's drive. So generally regional areas don't get impacted as much by these housing shortages as normal, but they were actually saying that even the regional centres are going to be seeing massive drops in house values.
I think that's because obviously with COVID, everybody wanted to get out of the city and go to the country, and I think we saw a bit of a bubble happen there, and then that cooled off as restrictions came off in terms of the city, and people go, well, I mean, it's the thought of living in the country is fantastic. It's always the issue of jobs and employment.
Yep. So
people have to eat, and to do that, they'll go where the jobs are.
Yeah. So you hit the head there saying that people move, not being stuck in the house for 2 years. A lot of people, instead of saying, "Oh, I've got to be as close to work as possible," they're saying, "Well, if I'm stuck in my house, let's make it comfortable." So they started moving to suburbia, moving out of the capital cities, much better houses. They could redirect a lot of the funds that they sold for the property that they sold in the city to other forms of investments.
3 words: work from home.
Work from home. So, and I'm a sucker for this as well. I hate Perth traffic for a passion. I have intentionally for the last 10 years done jobs that are not 9 to 5 purely so I don't have to deal with traffic.
Now you're going to get all the Sydney siders stirred up now. They're saying Perth doesn't have traffic.
Okay. There's a reason I don't live in Sydney or Melbourne, so I don't have to deal with their everyday traffic. So traffic is, I think, and I've had this conspiracy theory for a while.
Oh, at least you're upfront about it.
Traffic lights.
Yep.
I think they were invented and designed by the oil companies. Because have you ever noticed our cars, when they rate their fuel economy, they've got country driving versus city driving? Because it start, stop, start, stop, start,
Yep,
stop,
yep.
stop. Just burns fuel like there's no tomorrow.
Yep.
So traffic lights. I think traffic lights are the number one cause of stop-start traffic. If you just sit there and you idle along
Mhm.
and you don't actually stop, you just sort of like putt along, you use way less fuel than if you start, stop, start, stop. You're not disorienting your brakes. You're not wearing out your accelerator, like starting and stopping and all that. So I personally think traffic lights are created by oil and gas companies to burn more fuel.
Well, I'd like to see you verify that.
Oh, absolutely. Conspiracy theory, no evidence whatsoever. Just to be clear, there was a city in Sweden, I think it was Sweden.
Yeah.
They removed all their traffic lights and replaced everything with roundabouts.
Uh-huh.
And apparently you never had traffic jams anymore.
I remember my relatives coming over like 1998, and they just couldn't believe how many roundabouts were in Perth.
Oh,
These
go
guys were
Sweden.
from they were from the United States.
But
they have something different over there. They have a four-way stop.
sign.
Yeah. So
Right.
you give way to the person who's on the right and who pulls up first, right? Whoever pulls up first has the right of way and giving way to the right. It's really interesting.
No,
Yeah.
that's just retarded. That's not caused so many accidents, especially with like Perth drivers. They can't even give way. We don't even know how to use indicators over here. So, like,
You should drive in Malaysia, man.
no, it's stuff that I
Have you-
tried
have
to.
you-
I
that-
rode a motorbike in Vietnam,
Right.
and that was scary enough. So no, in Vietnam, just so people watching, when you cross a road, you give way to the lighter thing. So as a pedestrian, you just walk and you wave your hand, and you just walk straight across. Trucks, everything will stop for you.
Mhm.
On their main freeway, they have people with like, I think they've got buffaloes all over there, or like the
Cows.
They're not cows. They've got the big horns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oxen or something, and they're just walking down your freeway, middle of the freeway. All these trucks are fanging past it, doing 100 k's an hour. They don't care. Scariest thing in my life.
So getting back to the Reserve
Property.
Bank, what do you think of the implications going to be for mum and dads?
Mum and dads, they're going to lose their equity in the houses. Back in 2007,
Mhm.
I was a mortgage broker during the GFC.
Yep.
12 months without settling a loan because the banks would not lend money. The loan to value ratio, so this is how much debt you had versus the equity of the house, was just no one had equity in the houses.
Mm.
So on the mortgage side of things, my speculation is that, and see, I said speculation there. I think refinancing is going to go down the gurgler. I don't think many people don't have enough equity actually in the houses. I think a lot of people, there's always been this thing, oh, we'll just put it on credit, buy it today, use the equity in a house to go on that holiday, to get the new car, to do all those sort of things because they wanted things now. Not many people have actually gone, you know what, we've got equity in the house, let's save it there for a rainy day, and we'll actually pay cash for the car. So I think refinancing is going to be out. Buying investments for people are going to be out. I think banks are going to start getting very, very nervous and making money harder to get because after what happened in the 2008 global financial crisis, I think they'll start putting in internal caps on what people can actually lend. So I think investment is also going to dry up. Now, this is going to be the flip side. I think rental prices are going to go through the roof because there's going to be less houses on the market. There's going to be less houses available. Supply and demand says rental prices don't go up.
It's interesting to see that because, of course, with the first home buyers, if inflation's going up, it's harder to save because your money's not worth what it was.
Correct.
But the converse side of that is if prices are coming down, first home buyers might go, well, maybe that's a good thing.
I don't think houses are coming down. I think houses prices are correcting. I think for an extremely long time, and I'm
Yes.
talking decades, like
I agree with you there.
probably 4 or 5 decades, house prices in Australia has been massively overinflated.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed. And it's all because it's controlled.
and of course, like the amount of money, the tax that we pay on the housing industry and all the associated industries as well. So construction, finance,
Development.
refinancing, developments, all that is a massive source of income for Australia. So it obviously is artificially inflated.
If where we live, Western Australia alone, succeeded from the rest of Australia, we'd still be what, the 8th, 9th largest nation in the world in terms of land mass alone, right? We're not sure.
Tiniest for population though.
With 2.2 million, people in 7 million.
2.7.
Oh, it's 2.7. Oh, sorry, in the entire WA, about 2.2 in Perth, right? 2.2 in
2
Perth?
million, roughly 2 million in Perth, 2.7 across all.
We have
of the
under
states.
3 million people living in Western Australia,
Yeah.
right? With this much land,
Yeah.
why is it that house prices and land costs so much?
Oh, I
'Cause
can,
it's
tell you, I
control.
can tell you this one.
Why?
Everyone wants to live in the city
Well, is
or
it
close
that?
to the coast.
Is it that, or is it because
because
government hasn't built other infrastructure in other areas and spread the load from Perth, right?
Yep.
We haven't developed our Bunburys far enough. We haven't developed our Geraldtons far enough. We haven't developed our Kalgoorlies far enough.
I can give
haven't
you a
developed
political answer for that.
All right, give us a political answer.
We centralize all infrastructure to the capital cities because that's where the people live.
Mhm.
And so what happens is there's no construction, like large scale infrastructure, like generating jobs in those areas. So prime example is the Kwinana Outer Harbour. So Kwinana's, for the people not in WA, is probably about 45 minutes from the city.
Mhm.
South coast, there's the naval base just there, and the outer harbour is actually inside the naval base. So what happens is the Fremantle Wharf apparently is coming to the end of its life. There's still 50 years plus in it. So instead of sending it out of the metro area, so they've decided they want to send it into McGowan's neighbourhood, because he's actually the premier, that's his seat. So there was an EPA report done with 17 adverse environmental effects in that area. The other two places they could have built it was Bunbury and Geraldton. So Geraldton was a place called Oakajee. There's a naturally 32 metre deep natural harbour. So there was no dredging, no changing the sand drifts, no environmental impact. I think there was two things. They had to destroy some spinifex, put a train tracks in or a road, and there was something else in the water. I think it was oil from the ships in the water was the two problems they had there. The other one was Bunbury. Bunbury had about 4 or 5. Again, Bunbury's already got a natural harbour. It's not quite as deep, so that some dredging would be required. But Kwinana is only 12 metres deep.
Mhm.
Now, 18 metres, they have bedrock. So the way you get rid of bedrock, you explode, like bang.
Mhm.
So you also have a lot of the migrations for the whales, penguins. The seagrass there is responsible for a lot of the spawning grounds for the salmon, the fish, and whatnot. So massive environmental impact, but yet the Greens were absolutely silent on this one. So what's happening is you've got these politicians who, right, I need jobs in my backyard to keep my seat. So I'm going to approve as many job developing infrastructure things in my local area. It's not pork barreling because you're not giving community grants, but it's as close as you can get without it actually being pork barreling. Rather than going, you know what, we need to get people out of the cities into the regional areas and start developing and diversifying. Because the other thing as well, like look at the transport. One of the biggest causes of traffic in the southern suburbs is actually South Street, which is the road coming from the Fremantle Harbour coming out and around the city. So that's what Road 8 was going to be. And they had all those environmental protests and everything because, you know, you can't destroy a few trees, but yet you're absolutely decimating the marine aquaculture life ecosystem. That's what I was looking for. Not a peep. So if you moved the outer harbour to Oakajee, which is just north of Geraldton, put a train into, say, Midland or one of the outer suburbs of Perth, and instead of sending trucks backwards and forwards and burning those fossil fuels, you put it onto a train and send it backwards and forwards.
You know, it's incredible too. The other issue that we've got is that there is everyone's on the grid.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it's expensive to roll out the grid. If we put the grid aside and allowed more autonomy in terms of you know, having your own sewage, you know, okay.
Well, I can give you a story about that one.
Harvesting your own water, all right, and controlling your own water, harvesting, doing your own electricity and that sort of stuff, right? Then we wouldn't have the infrastructure costs. Because I can tell you now, these big estates, especially it was typical of the 90s, they were rolling out, 90s, 80s, 90s, where they would buy mass land, have big parklands and all this, and you'd have people building these massive homes on every square inch of the property and having a tiny backyard, right?
Yep.
That was the estate package that you would get, right? The problem with that is you end up paying for all those parklands,
Yes.
because they've got to be maintained.
You
end up,
water, bills.
and that's why the prices are so high. If you allowed people to, if you built more roads, right, and built less infrastructure and let people have their own autonomy in building those things, then you wouldn't have those issues. People are more likely to spread out further and, yes, build cities around different areas. But it's all about control, isn't it?
Yeah. The other thing is, and this is talking from personal experience. So we live near Armidale, which is about 45 minutes southwest of the city. Again, I hate traffic, so that's why I'm out of the city. Our water bill comes in bi-monthly. We don't have a choice. We have to go with the water corp. There's no competition in WA to keep prices down. So our water usage was $42. Our fees and charges, because we have deep sewerage, was $160. So and I know sewage pumping guys. And I said, how much would it cost to pump out a septic tank once a year? And they said $400. So that would be a quarter of my rate if I had a septic tank instead. And my grass would be amazing because you have leach tanks and it keeps the soil really well fertilized and all that sort of stuff. No, called them up, said, disconnect me. I'm going to go put some septic tanks in for $5,000. I'll dig up the backyard, put the tanks in myself. No worries. Oh, no, you can't do that because the pipe runs past your house. Whether you're connected to it or not, you still have to pay. And so just a bit of tongue in cheek. He said, just out of curiosity, do you believe in socialism? The guy goes, oh, yeah, socialism is great. It's like, yeah, that explains everything. Hung up immediately because I knew I wasn't going to win that argument. Like, they just running off feelings, not facts. So
Joshua's had a lot to say on the social media. Gus has jumped in on the conversation too. He says,
Gus is in too.
I moved to the city for work. Biggest mistake I ever made.
Yes.
So there you go.
I used to live in Subiaco with my ex-wife. And I think that's what made her my ex. I hated every second of it. I could walk to work in West Perth, but I got out as soon as I could.
Yeah.
So even like Willerton was too close to the city for me. Like, the further the better. And now, especially with how fast the internet is getting, and how, especially in regional areas. So at the moment, we're actually streaming off the mobile network through Telstra. I hate the company, but their network is by far the most reliable. Even in Geraldton, I get speeds that are faster than the NBN on the mobile network.
Yeah,
that shows how shit our NBN network is. And
it's outdated already, and we knew it was going to be technologies like that. As soon as you roll it out, basically you've got to update it with something else.
They butchered it because there was supposed to be fibre to the house, but to save $2 billion, which ended up costing, I think it was $10 billion extra, they went copper to the house, copper to the node, then fibre from the node to wherever. They should have just left it as it is. Geraldton's NBN speeds are amazing. Some of the most expensive because they were one of the first towns to be done, but it's just, the speed is good, it's reliable until someone rips a little box off the side of your house.
Joshua's a fan of Starlink. We better go to a break.
Starlink?
Yeah. That internet.
Oh, okay, Starlink. Sorry, I thought you said Starlin.
No,
I was thinking,
Starlink.
what? No, Starlin's bad. Starlin's really, really bad. So
Starlink.
But just quickly before we go, going back to my notes, house prices, yes, down 20%. That's expected by the Reserve Bank of Australia. I think people need to prepare for some serious hurt, especially in the value of their properties. But like everything, this is an opportunity for those who have been smart and protected themselves early. If, for example, a unit in Perth drops 20%, so at the moment they're roughly 200, 215 for a one-bedroom apartment in the CBD areas. So you can pick up units anywhere between 150 to 160, especially if they're people that are trying to get out. You might get it even cheaper. So straight away, with rent prices going up, a mortgage on 160,000, you're looking probably say $100 a fortnight at the higher levels. So we're talking 8-9% interest rates here. Your rental values on those ones, you don't be looking anywhere between $300 to $400 a week. I'd say maybe $100, $150 a week in the expenses like strata management fees, cost maintenance, and all that sort of stuff is a really good opportunity to pick up some very, very good cheap investments. So make sure you see your financial advisor before making any decisions on financial investments.
There you go.
Is that enough of a disclaimer for you?
Absolutely. It sounds good to me. There's always opportunities in these moments in markets. So,
but you need to be aware of them coming up first. And I think that's a big thing. Talking about opportunities coming up next week, we've got a pretty cool guest. I'll tell you more about that on the next show. So let's hit a song. This mouse keeps turning off, so it won't work. So this is Edge Radio Australia with the Greater Wealth. I'm Travis, that's Derek, and we'll be back after this. Edge Radio hosted a very, very special event called How to Live Your Life Purposes Using the Techniques that the Wealthy use. Was that close?
Yep, very close. How to fund your life purpose using techniques the wealthy use. Absolutely.
It was hosted here at Edge Radio, broadcasted by your one and only Derek the Dollar Dazzler.
Moi. Guilty as charged.
Guilty as never admit guilt. Just because you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. There's a lawyer in America that's his catchphrase, which is kind of cool. So we hosted it here. It was $47 a ticket. It was a great event. So we have decided it was such a great turnout on the day. There was so many. It helped a lot of people. So what we've done, we've gone through and we've very, very scientifically picked some winners. for people who have been liking, sharing, subscribing. And there's a few there. I'm going to openly admit that I'm just put their names in anyway because I can. You don't like it, well, too bad. Yeah, this wasn't a biased draw at all or not. Anyway, so we have the drum roll. I'm really bad at that. So they will be gaining access to the Edge Radio portal, which I'm yet to build. It will be built tonight. And they will have access to this live presentation on there for a limited time only. So let's start with the number one.
Number one.
Aaron.
Not a good start, Travis, but okay. Aaron's away. The mice will play. Okay. Aaron's won access to it. Well, Aaron, congratulations.
Second one is actually a mate of mine. This is one of the ones I just put him in because I think he really deserves it and they could do with the help. So Tony and Taz, who have been listening on Twitch. So twitch.tv/Carter's Corner. So thank you very much for being on board with that one. Now, there's a few here. I don't know if these are real names or not because obviously it's social media. So I'm just going to go through, reach out to them via PMs, find out the real details, get their emails off them and send them the invite. So we have, on top of that, we got Hidden Mike. I don't know if it's a real name. Alan, Chrissy, Luan, that's the wife, and I'll put her in anyway. Phil, Russell, Gus, Peter, Josh, well done, mate. Lots of comments from Josh. So again, he's another one I just put in.
Absolutely.
And
well done, Josh.
Sharon. So good old Shaz as well. So she doesn't watch live. She watches after the show, puts comments in, asks a few questions, and we hit her up on that one as well. Cool. So when I flick a login to Shaz as well. So congratulations, everyone.
Look, thanks. I hope you guys get a lot of value out of that. I mean, there's a lot in there. We look at the aspects of what the wealthy doing that the poor aren't. And we're looking at 12 key aspects that they do that most people don't even think of or aware of, but they make such a big difference. It's funny how the smallest sometimes actions make a huge difference.
It's those 1%ers. Well, have a look at when the Eagles won the grand final against the Swans. The 1%er that won the grand final, Daniel Chick doing the smother on the gold line. So 1%ers cannot be underestimated. That's the difference between elitism and mediocre, in my opinion. And you have a look at as the, what they call it, the mastery curve, I think they call it. The time taken versus the skill level, sort of like a S. And the 1 or 2% takes a lot of time to master, but not much of an improvement. But once you get the difference between someone who's competent at a job and that 1 or 2% extra to someone who's an elite at their job, chalk and cheese. And the difference in what they earn on those little things, especially around the mindset of people who are actually looking at money and how money affects their lives is really, really important, especially in these very uncertain and curious times that we currently have, which is fun.
It's a great time to increase your financial education. Absolutely. Because it's what you know that you know, it makes a big difference to navigate through it. You can make, you know, without knowledge, you just don't know what to do.
It's one of those rare things where it's not who you know, it's what you know. Where normally it's not what you know, it's who you know. So especially in Australia, and like if you're doing construction or work or jobs, things like that, especially in Perth, if you know someone in the know, then you'll get the job. But especially with finance, it's what you know, not who you know, because you'll find the people later.
It's a game. It's a real game.
And you get lots of happy tickets. What do you call them? Happy tickets?
Money is happy tickets. That's what one of my mentors told me. Wes. Yeah, shout out to Wes Home. So there you go. So
awesome. This has been the Greater Wealth. I nearly called it the Dollar Dazzler. This has been the Greater Wealth without Aaron, Travis Carter, myself. Woohoo. And we've got Derek from Blue Sky Factory. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you for having me.
Legend.
It's
been fun. It's been awesome. Now, if you guys do have any questions, please make sure you reach out to us on the comments. We do read them. Anything comes up, any questions for Derek, I'll pass them through to him. Or you can go visit him at Blue Sky Factory. That's BLU skyfactory.com.au. Yep. Alternatively, you can email us here at info@edgeradioaustralia.com and we'll make sure we get the message through to him.